Recently, VR games have become a sensation. People have played them wherever possible. And many companies have engaged in their development, thereby creating an impossible competition. To create high-quality games, large companies use artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, inside one of these companies, a guy in VR glasses was sitting in a virtual reality game development studio. Inside the virtual world, he is greeted by a girl who called him Master, and she is here to help him. She is an artificial intelligence named Gaia, and in front of her is an ordinary guy with glasses, who was the young director of Napalm Games, Nam Min Cole. She was the most developed artificial intelligence in the world. That's how they started developing games, but at the first stages of development there were system errors, bugs, and so on. They went through a lot of things. They were not washed away by a big wave, struck by lightning, but they continued to work. I had to solve a lot of problems before something came out, but with the help of the traffic police, Min Cole's talent finally began to manifest itself. And after many more attempts and failures, the world that they had been creating for so long finally appeared. A world famous, deservedly considered a masterpiece, and the MMORPG virtual reality game appeared, and its name was Wings Online. While our hero was finalizing some conventions, Guy turns to him. He asks her what's the matter. She is interested in the question about the game, what will happen to her when the development of the game is completed. He smiles looking at her and answers, she will become the goddess of this world, and asks her to rule this world wisely. In response, she says that then they will soon have to say goodbye. The guy did not understand what she meant. He tells her, if she wants, you can contact him at any time, as he is going to continue working on this project. She turns her head denying it. She doesn't think it's possible because she'll be busy. He also assumes that it will not be easy to manage the whole game. He smiles and stands a little ahead of him and says if one day this world comes to an end, then she asks to be near her, just like now. And we are transported much forward in time, where someone talks about the details of a large-scale update, and our hero, meanwhile, tired of all this, simply ignores. Napalm Games celebrates 5 years since the release of Wings Online. The head of the business department, Yong-Ha Soo, says that all this time they have adhered to a subscription-based model. The number of players is decreasing, and their income is falling dramatically. Therefore, for the 6th update, the business department introduces an in-game payment system, and suddenly Min Cole asks who decided this? Ha-Soo didn't understand the question. Then the guy asks again, who decided to make such an update without consulting Min Cole? The head of the business department replies that it's all for the sake of the company's prosperity. But is it so? Our hero answers, that's how the employees will be able to sell the company's shares at the end of the year, and how desperately they are trying to raise the value of the shares. Mocking them, he says it's a hilarious sight. A man in a Hawaiian shirt sitting at a table asks our hero to tone down, as this is not a suitable place for discussions. The guy is responsible. Instead of improving the service, they introduce incomprehensible schemes for making money by resorting to fraudulent actions in order to increase income, followed by a mass sale of company shares. The game is getting worse, and the balance of small investors is going downhill. Then he asks Yun-Ha Soo how many small companies he has already bankrupted. He warns them about in-game payment systems while he works for this company, forbids them to even think about such a thing. He won't allow his game to be used for deception, and then the man in the shirt can't stand it, and calls it nonsense. And is their director in his mind or not? The guy replies that then just fire him. But isn't their guts too thin? If not, then they may not wait until he changes his mind. Then he slams the door and leaves, and people started discussing him. They are sure that he is completely crazy, since the meeting has just begun, and there are already some disagreements. But he's the developer of this game, and there's nothing they can do about it. But he shouldn't be so stubborn, and then they want to try to win him over to their side. Yong-Ha Soo himself did not take part in the discussion, and stood drooping from the fact that his plans were thwarted. Our hero, the evil one, leaves the negotiation room calling everyone old farts, and he boasts of his influence, because he is the chairman's son. 3 days later, we were transferred to the central square of Wings Online, and the time was half of the 3rd day. All the players were calmly going about their business or just spending time on the court, when suddenly some player appeared covered in black energy that devoured him. The players started paying attention to him, pointing at him and asking what is it. The player asked to call him a doctor and just asked for someone to help, while the others could not understand what was wrong with him, poisoned him, or he cursed himself somewhere. In any case, he urgently needs to be rescued, and here a healer girl shows up, who uses the Aura of Purification skill. This skill brings all the indicators of the target back to normal, but after using it, the player does not get better, and the dark energy devours him more and more. Then he dies, which scared all the players. No one has ever seen this in the game. It was as if he had crumbled like dust, and it was terrifying, and one player caught this black energy in his hand and looked at it. An hour later, at the headquarters of the company, Napalm Games, on which there was a sign of the imminent release of the 6th season of the game. Inside, the head of the quality control department, Lee Dong-ha, is looking for Hyun and shouts that the forum is just breaking up right now. By year, an incurable epidemic status has begun to spread in the game, and the problem is that if you die because of this status, then the account will disappear forever. Our hero says without panic that he will check everything himself now. He does not think that this is something serious, so he asks Dong-ha not to worry, deleted accounts will be restored after verification. But Lee Dong-ha thinks otherwise. He doesn't think it's that easy to fix and the players are just going crazy. But Hyun doesn't listen to him and logs into the system, where he is asked to choose the desired mode. He chooses the developer mode, after which the download follows and the guy gets into the game as a developer. All players received a welcome notification that there is a developer in the game. They all immediately paid attention to him, some even knew him personally, and everyone was wondering why the creator couldn't fix the game. He answers, at the moment they are engaged in determining the causes of the problems that have arisen. All bugs will be fixed as a matter of urgency. The players began to express their dissatisfaction. They believed that the developers were already really overreacting. The guy answers again, an urgent check was organized to solve the problem. But the players do not hear him and ask for compensation for moral damage, call the company terrible, ask for a refund for the purchase, the game is called terrible. Min Cole also replies that the game accounts will be restored after verification, but people still continue to run amok. They accused him of confusion, some did not need any verification, so it seemed much more fun for the players. As a result, our hero couldn't stand it, and just asked them to shut up by disconnecting from the game. After that, it became easier for him and complete silence came. Then he began to consider the dark energy, and it was the epidemic status that he introduced. We are shown an experiment on this epidemic status, where everyone gives out and wardbots die from the epidemic. Everything is much more serious than Min Cole assumed, but Gaia asks her master, why conduct such a terrible experiment? He answers her that this is a tribute to the classic games, especially the most famous games of 2000s. They had a massive bug, causing an epidemic. Gaia drew attention to the word epidemic, about which she asked again. Our hero confirmed it. This incident has acquired such a scale that even the newspapers wrote, and he does not think that he has seen something similar in other modern games, so he decided to make a special event. The problem is that his experiment turned into a huge bug and now it cannot be fixed. As a result, although it's a shame, but nothing can be done, and then he asks Sky to delete all the data related to this. She then obediently obeyed the order, and it should have already been deleted. Then our guy thinks that maybe Guy knows something. He asks Sky to report the current situation, but she does not give an answer, and then he calls her again. Suddenly they answer him that no one will answer, and you don't even have to call. It was Yong-ha-soo, who told us how from now on our hero will not have access to all the data of Napalm Games. Min Cole doesn't understand what Ha-soo is talking about. He tells him that he is fired. This shocked the guy, and Ha-soo further explains, in today's news, the incident in Wings Online is amazing. One employee decided to obstruct his superiors by developing his own company management plan, and Napalm Games realized this and decided to fire him. And he will also answer for the damage caused in court, to which our hero asks if he invented it himself or who helped. But the new director asks not to worry about Wings Online, as he will be an excellent director. Anyway, Min Cole has been indulging himself too much lately, says Ha-soo. At this moment, the guy grabs him and tries to hit him, but the new director calls Guy. And with great force, someone lands on the ground, driving our hero into the ground. It was Guy who was standing on the guy looking at him with anger. He was shocked, and Ha-soo was laughing and wondering what it was like to meet his former assistant. And let him just not say that he expected fidelity from artificial intelligence, then the guy says that he will not just leave it. But Hasu starts laughing even more, saying that he is crazy. Afterwards, he asks Min-ko what he thinks he was doing while he was living in his virtual world. In the real world, he is just a small cog of a big mechanism. If he wants to survive, you need to be able to adapt. And he asks, so why doesn't he take control of the situation and plunge into reality at least once? Although even if he does, it's better to find a sensible lawyer for himself, since he will pay for everything he did in their direction. After wishing him luck and disconnecting him from the game, laughing at the same time. But our hero thinks to himself that young Hasu didn't even think that he would leave it like that, since he created this world. Therefore, he will put an end to it, he will see the worst ending himself. After a while, in the apartment of our hero, who was watching the news, it said Napalm is the largest game developer company. An employee complained about the company's policy. It turned out that the company had a universal bug. More than 70% of the annual income of Napalm Games is the profit from Wings Online. And the guy sat silently and looked at this news while he was thinking about something else. Young Ha-soo is probably convinced that he has thought everything through. But if Wings Online disappears, Napalm Games will come to an end. He puts on a suit and begins to prepare for immersion in the virtual world. As Young Ha-soo said, in real life our hero may be just a small cog of a big mechanism, but in virtual reality he is God. He puts on virtual reality glasses and is sure that they will meet soon, because God is angry. Starting the dive, the guy realizes that the world has come to an end. In the virtual world, he is met by artificial intelligence, who is worried because yesterday the gentleman was not online. His name was Oasis, and he was wondering if everything was fine with the gentleman. He replaced Guy's artificial intelligence. Min-ko implemented artificial intelligence with the company's money, but it was registered on his account, so it didn't disappear anywhere. This pleased the guy, since it would be easier to destroy the world than he thought. He replies to Oasis that he had business, and doesn't he get notifications? Oasis responds positively, and says that a letter has arrived from Napalm Games, after which he begins to read it. Before he finished reading the letter, he was shocked that his master was fired. Oasis realizes that he has access to the company's server, and after a short silence, the intimacy begins to calm the owner. Since Napalm Games is not the only company in the world, many people need such a capable person as his master. He opened the job tabs and was surprised by their number. Our hero does not need it. He asks Oasis to turn on the firewall. The intimacy itself did not understand at first, and the guy begins to explain. They use China as geolocation. Each entry is carried out through different accounts, and if data leaks from the account, you will need to get rid of it. Oasis understood all this, but did not understand why all this. And then the owner begins to explain to him. From that moment he will begin to destroy Wings Online. After these words, he presses the start button and begins to dive into the game itself, where he gets acquainted with all the rules and so on. After some time, our heroes meet in the game. Oasis resorts to the master and calls him. But Min-ko was angry because Oasis had been choosing a character for a very long time, which he asked him about. He also replied to the gentleman that she was playing for some character for the first time. Obviously, it took time to choose her appearance. Oasis admires her body very much, as if it is real, and for her it is entertaining, exciting, in a new way. But the guy is not interested, and he just silently walked on. Oasis ran after him. Walking through the initial village, Oasis thinks that due to disconnection from the server, all information regarding Wings Online has been erased. Everything seems so new. Is that why there is such excitement inside? Asking this question, Oasis was glowing with impatience, after which he ran up to the gentleman and said that adventures with the gentleman were a dream. Then the artificial intelligence asks what they will do today. Are they still at a high enough level to send them to hunt squirrels? After all, they are on the first level. You first need to get a quest. And while Oasis was thinking, our hero took the torch through which they passed. He gives the torch to his assistant and asks her to hold it. Oasis looked at the torch and saw the description of the object. A regular torch with a strength of 5 out of 5 and a damage of 1.5 units is also good for lighting dark areas. Then he asks what the torch is for, but the guy answers what difference it makes to him and takes the second torch for himself. After that, Min-ko sets fire to the grass and says that they will set fire to it. This shocked Oasis, as he did not understand what the gentleman was doing, and he asked Oasis to do it too, since an inconspicuous figure was needed. But Oasis refuses, being in complete shock from all this. After that, the fire spread to the whole village. As a result, our hero gets 10 points of shame for committing crimes. But the guy is a little disappointed, as he expected more points, and assumes that the fact is that this is a village of beginners. Suddenly an old man from the village turns to him, grabbing him by the shoulder and asking for what is happening here. She asks to stop this madness immediately, but a little later she notices something glowing from below. It turns out that our hero sets fire to an old man, and he starts screaming hysterically in pain. Then Oasis realized one thing: this is not an adventure, this is a crime. As a result, the guy gets 100 points of shame for the killed NPC, which pleased him, because he knew that they would give a lot for the murder. Oasis, angry from the actions of the owner, asks, "What is he doing?" But Min Cole calms him down, as the old man will soon be resurrected. Oasis did not immediately understand what the gentleman was talking about, after which the body disappears and a living old man returns not far from them. He greets travelers, because he was the owner of the village, and before he could finish, he was set on fire again. The guy rejoices in the simplicity, and what can be repeated over and over again. The Oasis watches the gentleman and asks someone to stop him. At this moment, the villagers appear, pointing at our hero. They know that he set the village on fire. They start running at him to catch him. This made the Oasis a little happy, which mentally supports them. But in the end, Min Cole set fire to the villagers one by one, after which he began to get 100 points of shame. He sets fire to everything and everyone in turn, and watching him, Oasis realized for sure that the gentleman was not joking. He really wants to destroy Wings Online. As a result of arson and murder, the guards come running, who orders our heroes to stand and calls them criminals, after which they surround them. Oasis was shocked by all these events. Min Cole smiles from this, after which the guards will arrest our heroes. After that, Min Cole and Oasis are taken to an unknown place on a carriage for criminals. The guy looks at the stats where it is written, 0 level items, 2,140 points of shame. This is a job for beginners. Looking at this, the guy decides that this will be enough. Then we are shown an Oasis who is in a terrible state, and can't believe that the game has just started, and they are already being sent to prison. But our hero calms the Oasis. As a novice is not sent to prison, they have the advantage to have time to adapt. But beginners can also get shame points, and what will happen? But Oasis, after a short silence, replies that she doesn't know. Then Min Cole explains. The initial village will turn into the abode of criminals, the underground city. And the carriage runs into the underground village. After that, our heroes are kicked out of the carriage. Oasis Evil looks at the guard and listens as he says that they belong here. Our heroes are silent, and you can see how they are infuriated by this attitude. After that, they get up and Min Cole begins to tell. The hunt begins for players who have received a lot of shame points. They are attacked by guards and harassed by bounty hunters. The only place where such players are able to exist is the underground city. Oasis asks, for the beginning of the game in this city give any advantage? The guy answers, rather, they don't give an advantage, they just can get secret work that is not available to other players. Walking through the village, he continues to say that the work of the villain still needs to be thoroughly searched among the piles of all kinds of garbage. At this moment, he smiles and clenches his fist. This scares Oasis and thinks that this job is good, since the master wants to get it. But our hero answers in the negative. In fact, it is a bit ambiguous, and then Oasis does not understand why the gentleman is doing all this and asks about it. He worked a lot for this, but if no one found out about it, then it's a little sad, and looking at his assistant asks if he thinks so. Suddenly, someone unknown turns to them and asks them to come over for a minute. It was a character in a cape and a strange blue skin color who asks to come up for just a minute. He needs to tell them something good. Min Cole says that this NPS will just give the right task. After that, they come up and start listening to a strange character who can't believe that they managed to score so many shame points so quickly. He sees that they are not just villains. Then he introduces himself as the Dark Magician, Abbot, and it seems to him that they will be excellent servants of the Dark Lord, Raven. And a mission notification appears in front of our heroes. It was an initiation into villains. It says there, being a beginner, they managed to score a lot of shame points. They are full of villainous talent, and the city wants to dedicate them to the dark faith. Conditions of occurrence. As a beginner, score more than 1,000 points of shame, and the reward for completing, assignment of the hidden class, Dark Magician. After reading this, Oasis was surprised. It's amazing, and the gentleman was just looking for it. But looking at the gentleman himself, he sees. The guy pulls out a torch and smiles maliciously. Then Oasis realizes that it looks like his master was not looking for this. After that, our hero takes and burns the dark magician, who began to scream hysterically in pain. Oasis asks Mr. to stop. NPS will give them a hidden class. Didn't they come for him? Why does Min Cole keep killing? He calls Mr. crazy and looks at him with contempt, but the guy replies he wouldn't kill an NPS for no reason. Then dark energy comes out from the killed NPS, which alerted the Oasis, and what our hero expected. A knight appears in front of them from the dark energy, who cannot believe that they killed the abbot, and he waited a long time for someone as cruel as them. Oasis felt as if they had been insulted, and the knight introduced himself as the leader of the Dark Knights, Tyrio. Then he asks to follow him. He will respond to their atrocities. And then the mission changes. Now it was initiation into the devil. Now it was written there. The dark forces were waiting for a true villain who could make the Dark Lord shudder. Tyrio, the leader of the Dark Knights, wants to make them a servant of the Dark Lord, and the reward for doing so is the assignment of a hidden class of Dark Knight. After that, Min Cole explains to Oasis that he was looking for a job as a Dark Knight. This delighted the artificial intimacy, after which they followed the Dark Knight into the portal. They moved to the Great Hall, where our heroes stood in the very center of the hall on a large red circle. Then the Dark Knight greets travelers in this hall, then asks permission to ask a couple of questions to travelers before they become Dark Knights. Before the questions, our hero asks Oasis not to answer the Dark Knight's questions, since Oasis will have another job. This made our hero's assistant mad. He started calling Min Cole greedy and asks that he wants all the good work to go only to him. He replies that they should do everything together. If they get the same job, then the balance will be broken. He reassures Oasis that there is a suitable job for him, but his partner turns away resentfully. Then the Dark Knight turns to the Oasis with the question, the only and absolute ruler of this world is the Dark Lord, Raven. Does he agree with this? Oasis, a little scared, answers in the negative, after which the Dark Knight gets angry and asks how dare he say something against the Raven? After that, he decides that the Oasis does not fit and orders him to leave the circle urgently, to which our hero's partner agrees. Then the same question was asked to our hero, to which the guy agrees, saying that the only one who is able to control this world is a raven. The contented knight is glad to hear such an answer, saying how true and well said it is. The following questions were whether our hero, being a supporter of the Raven, is ready to sacrifice himself for the sake of the dark forces. Is he ready, being a Dark Knight, to advocate the destruction of the followers of light? Min Cole answers all these questions positively, since this is his goal. As a result, he answered all the questions, and the Dark Knight is interested in the name of our hero's character, to which he answers Labo. And the last question remains for the Dark Knight to Labo: is he ready to sacrifice his body and soul in the name of the Dark Lord? Then an alert appears in which it says that with consent he is given the title of Dark Knight. Does he agree? Labo agrees to these conditions. As a result, he becomes a Dark Knight, and an alert appears. He has approached the dark forces and the current proximity level is 1, then MP will be removed, since all skills will be replaced with HP. Only Dark Knight skills are available. They open depending on the level of the character. Also, the exclusive, evil, characteristic of the first level was opened. The level of evil increases depending on the number of shame points. Skills improve depending on the level. You just need to increase shame points. And an important note: if he is caught by a guard, the shame points will be reset, after which the dark energy enters our hero. He understands that he can get stronger if he increases the shame, but if he gets caught, the points will drop to 0 and he will have to develop all the skills from the very beginning. Turning to his partner, he says that it is because of these risks that he likes this kind of work. Oasis is upset. As it turns out, they will have to commit crimes endlessly and run away in search of adventures. Next, the NPS dedicates our hero to the Dark Knights and gives a small gift, but this is not enough for the guy. He thinks he should have installed his weapon to get something better. He received the Thorn Sword of the Dark Knight of the usual class, 10 levels and no level restrictions, strength 15 out of 15, damage from 30 to 40 and additionally plus 5 levels from the evil characteristic. The Thorn Sword is issued to ordinary Dark Knights, causes pain due to sharpness. After that, the Dark Knight calls on our hero to go and spread the name of the Dark Lord throughout the continent. After that, the portal opens and Oasis says that he is going to go for his work, but either stopped him. Oasis did not understand why he was stopped, and the guy explains that friendly NPS do not retaliate, but the friendship level will drop if they are killed. Their new friend Tyrio belongs to the Dark Forces, and so does he, and it also seems to our hero that he has a lot of items and experience points. Pointing his sword at him in the reflection, you can see how he licks his lips saying that his mouth is drooling. Oasis realized what Labo wanted to do, and he begins to ask the Rio for a petition, but in the name of the bright future of the Dark Forces, he will have to kill him. Hunting monsters gives experience and increases the level. As a reward for completing quests, gold is given, with which you can buy items. Items are fashionable to collect, you can cook, and our hero will create a squad to search for adventures and go to the dungeon, because this is the meaning of MMORPG games. And they show us Labo, who kept waving his sword in front of the Dark Knight, in front of the NPS, unable to even fight back, waving his weapon 9 somehow too much. Oasis, looking at all this, opens the inventory and thinks there is an unusual gameplay here, but if his master wants to go this way, then he will follow him. After that, our hero's partner takes and attacks the Dark Knight with a torch in her hands, but Labo asks her to stop. She hits the Dark Knight with a torch, and the object does not cause any effect, and then Labo explains that Tyrio is not afraid of fire, and she is not counted among the Dark Forces. And then she understands that if someone who is not privy to dark magic strikes, then the monster will fight back. After that, the Dark Knight takes and swings at the Oasis. As a result, he cuts off her head in the blink of an eye. The swing was so strong that the head bounced to the other end of the hall, and then a message appeared about the death of the character with the question, "Does Oasis want to be reborn in the village?" But there were also consequences of death after rebirth, which was written in the message, namely, if you are reborn in the village, then you will not gain experience for 3 days. The girl starts to panic, and she calls her master saying that her head was cut off. Labo replies if you stop the attack, HP Tyrio will recover and asks to wait for her. And continuing to attack, telling her that if she is reborn in the village, she will receive a fine and that she will not even think of agreeing, but she lies in tears and asks the gentleman to hurry up. 3 hours later, our hero deals a decisive blow to Tyrio saying goodbye to him, and cuts off his head. After that, he brags to Oasis about how he took revenge, but she angrily shouts for him to finally help her. As a result, he uses a healing stone and the girl's body is completely restored, after he says how her head was cut off and she would never have survived such a thing. But our hero is not steaming over this and eagerly goes to see what fell out of the Tyrio. Oasis resentfully thinks that he would worry about her at least a little. He approaches the murdered NPS and sees 4 things, and the guy starts checking these things. First, he checks the Raven Mask, whose class was unique, level 35, strength 30 out of 30, physical protection -150, magical protection 300, also intimacy +50 and mana +20. There was also a spell that picks up the whispers of darkness, and anyone uninitiated in dark magic will go crazy if he wears a mask. The guy, after reading everything, understands that this is a unique class, but it is available from the 85th level, so he will not be able to use it. He throws the mask to Oasis, telling her to take it away and then they will sell it. She looks at this cursed mask of the Dark Lord and begins to feel a very strange aura. Then the guy finds a thing that will be useful to him. This is the deadly basilisk potion, which creates a poisonous cloud of 5 sectors and causes damage proportional to the maximum HP value for 15 seconds. And at the end it says that it ignores protection and the potion is made from basilisk teeth, so it is advisable not to drink it. After that, our hero screamed sharply in surprise. He was surprised by the last thing that fell out of the Rio. It was an unknown key, the key of an evil aura, and what kind of lock does it open? Oasis is glowing with interest and asks what kind of key is this, and what does it open? But the guy puts it in the inventory and replies that later he will tell her where to use it. She resentfully tells him that he is playing alone, he already knows everything himself and the poor artificial intelligence has its head cut off here, but he doesn't care. The guy looked a little surprised at what was said and then Oasis asks why she went after him at all. After that, he pushes her to the portal and answers so that she does not sulk at him and needs to go back to the village. When they entered the portal and it closed, the Dark Knight's helmet disappeared and the Rio was completely restored. Looking after them, he thinks everything is exactly as someone predicted for him. Our heroes have returned to the underground city, and the oasis is waiting for their first job and asks the gentleman about it. He responds positively, but there is something else that needs to be done, to which she asks why he keeps stalling and coming up with some ideas. He explains, as she knows, the development of Wings Online began 5 years ago. Playing as a villain has more disadvantages than advantages. So, all the other people in the underground city, they are all beggars who are called psychos, even if they are not guilty of anything. The one with whom our heroes are going to meet is the ruler of all these psychopaths, in other words, the real king of psychos. From the story, Oasis was covered with ice and she could not understand whether it was a joke. She did not even know whether to laugh or not when the gentleman was smiling about it. He wonders why they need him, for what purposes they are looking for him. The guy answers that to start a business, you need a lot of things, but the most important thing is money. Then they show us how another player addresses a player on the street. He assumes, judging by his facial expression, that he was tortured by bounty hunters. After that, he claps his hands and says he has the lowest prices in Korea, guarantees a 100% safe deal. It's very cheap, he can exchange gold, so the player will become even stronger. But he answers in the negative if his wife finds out the end for him. The guy who offered these conditions thought that marriage is really dangerous. It's not that he can't, he just doesn't want to. After that, our heroes turn to him and Labo says that he wants to talk to his boss. He looks at them and realizes that they are new to the game, it seems, some poor people, and decides not to react to them. He tells them that he does not understand what he is talking about, since he is an ordinary player, and laughs. After that, our hero says that he should give Asaka. Anchovy brought a lot of orders. This surprised the guy very much. He turns around, answering that he does not understand what he and they were wrong, then runs away. Oasis asks the gentleman if he is going to catch up with this player. He tells her to just wait and see for herself, then she asks what kind of anchovy are we talking about. He explains, this is the nickname he used when creating the game. It surprised her, since he can reveal his identity so easily. But they don't disclose personal data, that's the rule, and Asaka couldn't, says Labo. They had already met at one time, and then after a while people came for them, who began to surround them. Oasis notices this, and Labo himself noticed how this Asaka sent his men after them. Having surrounded them, one of them approaches them and says the boss wants to see them and puts a bag on him. The guy asks him to treat him more carefully. Oasis panicked, but Labo asks not to worry, as this is all for safety. After that, they are led through the tunnel of the mine. Reaching the room, one of the people says to the boss, he brought these two as requested by the boss. They are launched and the bags are removed, and then the boss does not understand, since this guy, he is not the anchovy he knows. We are shown the real world, where our hero comes out of a coffee shop looking at his smartphone, as an unknown person suddenly turns to him asking if he is the director of Nam Min Cole. Min Cole asks in response, who is he and why did he come? He apologizes and introduces himself as Akasa, behaving uncertainly in front of the guy. When our hero realized who he was surprised that he came to him and asked if he knew that Min Cole could complain about him, conduct fines for harassment. But there is no other way for him to meet him. Then he begs, asks to drop the charges against him only once. He will never go against the rules of the game again. Min Cole exhales and answers, the case was decided in accordance with the company's policy. He can't help anything. And even if he could, he doesn't have the slightest desire, which shocked Akasa, and then falling to his knees, he asks again, begs to help him. At this moment, we are transferred to the virtual world, where our hero does the same thing, but asks for help just once. The fact is that he reminded him of that day and asked if these were his words. Akasa can't stand it and shouts for him to stop. After that he orders everyone to get out. Akasa's people leave, and Oasis is in a panic from what is happening, after which the boss exhales and begins to approach our heroes. And abruptly his face changes and he greets our hero calling him Hyun. He seemed to him some kind of loser, so at first he didn't even recognize. Then, with eyes of devotion, he asks what brought Labo to his humble abode. He says not to overdo it, because he knows that he was fired, to which he is interested in how it happened at all, probably because he is the wrong mutt of the company. After that, he tells him to forget, and he is no longer anchovy or Hyung for him, and asks him to call him Labo. He doesn't understand why Labo, and the guy replies that now it's his nickname. Akasa ponders this nickname, realizing that Labo from the ending is an abbreviation of the word boss. This struck our hero, as he himself did not expect. Meanwhile, Oasis thought about the nickname of the gentleman. Does he really want to become the final boss in this world? Then Labo goes straight to the point. He will share valuable information with Akasov, and he will lend him gold. After a while, Akasa sums up the conversation. It turns out that a payment system and an item that improves the process of raising the level will soon appear, and Labo offers to buy improvement stones to sell later. Labo suggests that this way you can earn extra money in a month. When the 6th update is released, the level limits will increase and new equipment will appear. But all the improvement stones will absolutely disappear as soon as a monetary unit appears. After the release of the update, there is almost no improvement left, but this problem will be solved quickly. But Akasa is focused on profit, so it does not affect him as long as he can earn, but this game, such an innovation will not hurt. But Labo replies that this is just the beginning, much worse items will still be introduced. Yongha-su is ready for anything for money. Suddenly, after what has been said, an alert appears in front of our hero about the transfer of 1 million gold. Akasa says here is 1 million gold coins for him. He has provided him with valuable information, so he will take no interest. After that, our hero thanks the guy and promises to return everything soon. Akasa asks if Labo is going to earn extra money on these stones? But our hero answers in the negative, since his goal is not money. After he starts to leave and tells Oasis about it, and as soon as they got to the door, Akasa says, his face looks pleased. The guy didn't understand what he meant, and he replies, Labo looks like them. He is not afraid to try everything to achieve his goal, and with an intriguing face he finishes, he has the face of a real villain. After that, our hero walks with Oasis down the street of the city and thinks about what has been said. The girl thinks that the charges have been dropped, and he is pretending to be a friend. But Labo replies that the trial was just a threat, it's a kind of warning for bad players, and even if they met, the case was closed. After that, Oasis asks the gentleman, since it's been 15 hours, is he tired? He replies that he is a little tired and asks to open a trading window, where there was the entire amount that Akasa lent them. Then he asks to open a bank first, and then inventory and buy up to the limit. Iron ore is estimated at 5 gold or less. He wonders why it is ore, but the guy says he will explain later because he is too tired. And then she remembers that while he is gone, she needs to rise to the 10th level. But Oasis, not knowing anything about the game, does not understand what she needs to do. The guy coming out says he will be able to get a permanent job only from the 10th level and wishes her good luck. Now she's on her own, and finally she can really enjoy the game. Then she began to act and first went to the store, where she bought all the iron ore for less than 5 gold coins. As a result, all the iron ore was successfully bought up, after which she went to hunt mice, killing one by one. Then there were spiders, which she also killed a lot. As a result, she received an alert about insufficient space in the inventory. The inventory was full, and she was asked to free up space and try again. She had so many items and she didn't know what to do, and decides to make herself clothes from spider silk. As a result, she greatly raised the level of the creation skill. She made herself a lot of spider wool fabric and admired how interesting it was. After that she started cooking. As a result, she also raised her cooking skill many levels higher. As a result, she put on a lot of batwing soup. For a moment she thought there was nothing else to do, but it wasn't. She found a fishing rod in the inventory, as a result of which she raised the fishing skill level by several levels to the top. She really likes to play here and she has already been to the 12th level, but the master has not been there yet, and one day has already passed. While she was sitting and fishing, she was noticed by 2 players who immediately realized that she was a beginner. And she seemed to be a very advanced newcomer to the underground city, who had not been seen here for a long time, so their intentions were not kind towards her at all. They decide to beat her and take her loot, after which they attack from behind shouting, "Welcome to the underground city." Our heroine reacted to this and turned to them at the moment of the attack. In the real world, our hero was sleeping, although it was already light outside, but his phone prevented him from sleeping. There were 52 missed calls on the phone, of which 32 were from Sang Shinji and 29 from Li Dongha. He understands that it is not so easy to get into the underground city, and therefore he needs to come up with an excuse for himself. Already in the evening of the same day, our hero was sitting in a restaurant with friends from the company, and a girl named Sang Shinji, the head of the graphic department of Wings Online, asks what kind of trip Min Cole is going on. He replies that he has worked like a horse for all 15 years, he needs to go somewhere very far away. He is supported by Lee Dong-ha, the head of the quality control department, who says that this is a great idea. Since school, they have been developing Wings Online together, and Labo's unusual style of play will become a problem, so he will only come under suspicion, so traveling is the best alibi. The girl asks where she wants to go to travel for a vacation. He replies that he has always wanted to visit India or South America, and also Bali. But the girl is not stupid and the guy understands that she clearly did not believe him, since she has a good sense. A friend of our hero tells him to rest there properly, because he plowed like a horse. And the girl takes a glass of alcohol and asks again what our hero is going to do then. Min Cole replies that he doesn't know yet because he hasn't thought about it. Dong-ha is jealous of the guy because he hasn't had a good rest for a long time, and Shinji doesn't remember the last time she slept properly. Min Cole jokingly tells them that they can always quit, but the girl thought about it seriously. She finishes her glass and puts it on the table and says, maybe it's really time to end this, she has wanted for a long time. After that, she suggests Anchovy and Dong-ha, why don't they start over? They listen attentively with a surprised look. She just suggests creating a small company. As they dreamed in high school, why don't the three of them start developing a game? Dong-ha eagerly replies that he agrees if Hyun helps them. But our hero was silent for a while and answered them with a question, when did they get drunk? But the girl was serious, to which the guy asks how her sick mother and her brother's studies are. Then Dong-ha asks, does he really want to leave his pregnant wife? How did they even come up with such an idea when they have so much responsibility? He tells them to forget about this idea, and offers them another drink. In himself, he decided that one day they would create their own company and work together on games, but now this is impossible. At the moment, he must take revenge on the company for the destruction of the game, and become a real villain. And at that moment he remembers the oasis. He wondered how she was doing. We are returned to the oasis that was attacked by 2 players, but no matter how much they attack her, she dodges or blocks attacks. The players looked at her and don't understand how she manages it. She, in turn, politely asks for forgiveness and wonders why they suddenly began to attack her. The guys don't understand who she is, how she was able to repel their blows, and how did the newcomer manage to block such an attack. Deciding that this is some kind of nonsense, they attack with shouts and say, there must have been some mistake, and try again. The guys decided to run straight to the oasis, which prepared to block the attacks. With her eyes, we see how she first repelled the attack of one opponent, and immediately after him the second. After that the evil one asks them why they still won't calm down. They think it doesn't look like a bug and don't understand what's going on at all. Even if blocking a blow reduces damage, at least a little bit, she should have suffered. The second suggests that with such a weapon it is possible. The only weapon with 100% reduction in damage Wings Online can be bought in a village shop for beginners. It was the beginner's dagger that Oasis was holding. Then one player asks the other, is it fair? He explains that no one uses him because he does too little damage, after which the first player asks, in other words, did she block the blows solely with the help of skills? Then they assume that there are 2 options here, either it's a PvP genius or a cheater. But they haven't met cheaters in this game yet, but there are no more ideas. Then one of them pulls out a crossbow and decides to check whether she is a cheater or not. His crossbow starts releasing lightning bolts, and he tells the girl to try to block it, after which he uses the rain of arrows skill. And Oasis flies a lot of arrows at once, but the girl blocks the arrows one by one, which makes the decision of the players obvious, she is a cheater. Oasis manages to block them until her dagger breaks due to low strength. Because of this, one of the arrows hits her in the head and she dies. The guys are standing on the corpse and asking questions, so did she use cheats or is it just a beginner with good reflexes? They can't decide because they don't know the answer, so they decide to report it to the developers. Suddenly an unknown person turns to them and asks, why are they 2 on 1? It was Labo who said that he would explode soon if he got drunk again. You can safely call him a dirty dog. They are interested in his personality, to which he replies that he is a friend of the child they just killed. They are all looking at Oasis, who was crying and calling for the master. He also tells the players, if they are eager to kill, let them be ready to be killed themselves. He pulls out his sword and asks them, aren't they well aware of this rule? He quickly started moving towards them and attacks the crossbowman. But he notices that he did not receive any damage, although he thought that Labo was something, but in fact turned out to be an ordinary beginner and laughs with him. The guy understands, because of the difference in levels, he can't do damage to him. After that, the second player attacks from above and repeats our hero's mind, readiness to be killed, and he himself is ready to die. Labo dodges the blow and he has to use an object. He is sorry to waste such a curiosity on these guys, but nothing can be done. He throws a basilisk death potion at them, which shatters and creates a deadly smoke screen. As a result, the crossbowman says that they urgently need to get out of the cloud and they start to run away, but our hero throws another potion. As soon as the players decided to run in different directions, Labo addresses them with words so that they do not worry. This fog has the properties of gas and stands over them with a torch in his hands. Then he says that once you set it on fire, it will disappear and throws the torch down into the very center of the gas. The players shout to each other to run away from the gas, and at this second there is an explosion of such force that the oasis flew into the lake. After the explosion, one of the players drinks a potion and looks at the partner who was standing and did not move. He says that he quickly took and drank the potion. But the crossbowman understands that he is stunned, because if he loses more than 70% of HP within 5 seconds, the player falls into a state of stun, and if he is attacked before recovery, he is finished. Our hero approaches them saying, after all, high-level players are not a joke, judging by the fact that they are still alive. The crossbowman asks his partner to stall for time until he recovers, to which he takes everything upon himself and asks not to worry about it. He hits with his combat gloves and uses the defensive stance skill. This skill allows you to take attacks on yourself instead of an immobilized member of the group and increases the strength of the defense. Labo looks at him and, understanding how he acts, uses his technique, Dark Aura. She envelopes his sword, and with this he runs at the partner of the crossbowman, who thinks that his tricks will not work against him. At this moment, our hero jumps with a swing at the enemy and hits him, causing heavy damage. He does not understand where this damage came from. Labo says this is very different from the previous hit. It was the Dark Knight skill, Dark Aura. It envelopes the weapon with a dark sinister flame and deals 100% additional damage, and additional damage breaks through the defensive force. The price of the skill, 1% per second of the maximum HP. The guy understands that using 1% of HP per second is quite risky, but given the difference in levels, only this method remains, so you'll have to finish him off as quickly as possible. Our hero starts a hail of attacks, and the crossbowman shouts to his partner to remove this defensive position, and just attack him in response. He removes the defensive position and, with words about the end of our hero's fun, attacks him. The enemy uses the Iron Strike skill, from which our hero differs by several meters. The player smiled, thinking that he had finished off the guy, but then noticed how Labo used the beginner's dagger and blocked 100% of the damage from the blow. This shocked the players because during the battle it is impossible to change weapons, although it is theoretically possible, but this is the first time they see such a thing. During the substitution, even for a few milliseconds, punishment may follow when the weapon falls to the ground. In such a short moment, the outcome of the battle can radically change, so many have already forgotten about the existence of this technique. And this guy uses it so easily. Who is he? The crossbowman understands that they better get out of here first. He's not just some dumb beginner, but most likely a high ranker. But Labo answers in the negative. Ranker is not really about him, he is closer to a living fossil. Our hero uses the Dark Aura again and is rapidly approaching his opponents. The partner of the crossbowman calls him and let him attack because he is not afraid, but he was not aiming at him, at his partner. He tells him not to worry, because the stun effect has passed. At this moment, he did not notice how he was already dead and lying down. The loser thinks, maybe he has already rested the game? His partner ran away while his friend was attacked and hiding, thinks, where did such a player come from? After that, he quickly opens the menu bar and exits the game. Then there is a report until the exit of 5 seconds and he begins to report. In the 3rd second, he notices Labo, who jumps on him to kill him and cuts him in two. Meanwhile, Oasis, who was floating dead in the lake, was thinking about the master and hoped that she had not been forgotten. After the fight, Labo uses the resurrection stone and restores Oasis, who decided that it was too risky a job, she can't do it anymore. The guy takes her by the head and apologizes for being late, and in the eyes of Oasis he looked fine. Looking at him, she just abruptly thawed and answered him, she is not used to it, because she has been reborn so many times, they say it makes the face of a beautiful girl. Next, our hero checks his shame points, which have grown to 4,380. This upset the guy because in fact they were small prey, but Oasis did not understand why, because those guys were strong enough. Labo explains that if one kills the other in a battle of dark side users, half of the opponent's shame points go to the winner, but he got only 2,000 points. Now his level of evil is second, and on the stats window it is written for 1,000 shame points. There is a lifting of the attack bans by 0.1% of the number of shame points, and the current increase in attack power is 4. For 3,000 points, the removal of second-level prohibitions increases HP by 1% of the number of shame points, and the current HP increase by 44 points. This puzzled our hero, because he has only risen one level and he is still far away. After he tells Oasis about her reaction speed, which can be mistaken for a nuclear weapon, in the future he asks her to make small delays during the use of combat techniques. She doesn't quite understand what her master is talking about, and he paraphrases his words saying that she should try to show a little humanity. She was struck by his words and she was so happy to hear them that she did not notice how the gentleman had already moved away from her. He does not understand why she is frozen and tells her to move. They go to get her a new class. They came to the temple and at the entrance of the Oasis understands where they are. Then our hero grabs her by the shoulders and explains that in order to use the skills of the Dark Knight, one way or another you will have to spend a certain amount of HP, so you will need to constantly monitor the indicators. For example, drinking potions replenishing HP or healing, therefore she should become a priestess of Oasis. Well, at the same time to replenish his blood, the girl kept silent for a couple of seconds and then with complete contempt asks what he wants to make of her a healer on errands. Our hero realized that Oasis is not as stupid as he might have thought, after which he grabs her on his shoulders with the words, "Rather let's go for a new class, because they have a lot to do." She tells him that she also wants to become the owner of the hidden class, as he promised her. Some time later, at the entrance to the temple, Labo was waiting for the Oasis, which at that moment came out of there. She called him and said that it was over. She was disguised as a priestess, and she had a staff in her hands. In the user ID of Oasis, it was written that now her class is a priestess, the level remains 12, the level of objects is 30, strength and dexterity are 5, intimacy is 15, health is also 5 and magic power is 20. He happily tells how she goes trying to encourage her so, he thinks it's cool to be a priestess. Moreover, they are very appreciated. It's worth barely mentioning the raid as a queue is lined up for them. She answers him that she understood everything and stopped telling her that, and they went on. Along the way, our hero tells us that since she has a class, it's time to go to the next goal, and she hoped that he was not going to kill the NPS again. He answers in the negative and tells them that their mission is to reach the 90th level, that is, the highest point, in 1 month. Oasis was very surprised by this, because it usually takes more than 6 months. Labo explains that the most significant update in history will begin in a month. A new continent will open, equipment of the latest models will appear, and the 100th will be considered the highest level. They need to reach it earlier, and when the upgrade is over, Labo will monopolize everything on the new mainland. After the conversation, they went to the underground snake den. The difficulty level is normal, the related missions are 5 pieces, the recommended level is 50. Walking through the dungeon, Oasis wonders if the dungeon level is too early for the master? He calms her down and asks her not to panic, as he has everything thought out. Suddenly, without having finished speaking, a large snake attacks them, and our hero pushes the priestess away, thereby saving her and taking the whole blow on himself. She was in pain, but she remained alive, and as soon as she could open her eyes, she began to look for the master. He was fine, because he managed to pull out his sword, and looking at the snake, he says how she scared him. Then he uses a dark aura, and Oasis gives an order for her to heal him. He accepts his commands and thinks to himself that he will definitely protect the master. Then he strikes at the snake, but it is not fatal and the monster strikes back at Labo. From the force of the blow the guy flies into the wall and was on the verge of death, but the Oasis heals him. As a result, he gets much better, for which he thanks his priestess and asks if he can trust his personal healer and move on. After that, he continues to attack. The girl told him that he can rely on her and go on the attack without looking back. She healed him again and again, and he attacked again and again. But at one point he started telling her that she had already cured him. You can't waste your skills so thoughtlessly, and the monster might notice her. He asks her to follow Ajijiro properly. But at that moment the snake went to attack the priestess, and the guy realizes that it's too late to warn her. She tried to heal the master again, but did not have time because the snake was already near her and hit her with her whole body and swallowed her. The price of the dark aura is a maximum of 1% HP per second, and without healing, he managed to hold out for a little more than 1 minute. If he dies, he will not escape punishment with points. And he can't allow that for anything. He attacks the snake and it attacks back. He understands that he needs to pull himself together. This is the style of attack that he came up with himself, and at this moment the snake attacks with its tail, then the body coverage goes, and finally the bite with a poisonous fang. Our hero successfully dodges all this, and the only chance is to throw out all the energy with a single blow. At this moment, he jumps over the snake and hits it in the head, but this is not enough. After that, he begins to fall. He needs help. As he falls, he thinks again, if only he could hit at least once more. Suddenly someone heals him and he calmly lands. The guy realizes that Oasis is still alive inside the snake. He starts attacking the snake again with the words that she should wait, and he will definitely pull her out. He jumps on the monster and attacks again. As a result, he defeats the snake and then begins to cut through its belly in search of an oasis. He finds her, and she was fine. Opening her eyes, she says how she said to trust her, and she kept her promise. After all this, they look at stats and the girl was very surprised. Thanks to the killing of just one snake, the gentleman rose as much as 5 levels. It's just that the difference in levels was quite significant, explains our hero. By the way, he certainly didn't come here for a reward, but it's nothing more than just junk. But he got snake meat, 30 coins, snake scales 6 pieces. He decides that next time he will need to go to the dungeon, where they give out normal items. Then he examines the walls of the dungeon and Oasis asks what he does. He begins to explain, originally there was supposed to be a lizard man dungeon here. Perhaps because it's a game, but users really like monsters that look like people, so monsters here look like monsters, and people look like people, such a concept. The girl now understands on what principle the game is being developed, and the guy continues to explain. Previously, the lizard people were a race that often uses traps, so there are traces of their creations here. This is exactly what our hero was looking for, after which he finds a stone that activates a hidden trap. It was a big pit with thorns, and here the Oasis assumes that it is worth falling here, and the user is waiting for imminent death. Labo says most of the monsters in this dungeon die after the first hit, and after that Oasis tells her it's time to go. She didn't understand what the gentleman was talking about, and then he replies that she needs to lure monsters. She was a little surprised and asked if she should do this. In response, he also asked if she wanted him to go by himself. Then he asks her to bring only 10 carcasses to begin with. Smiling tells her this. She's drooping, trying to smile back at him, although it's hard. After the conversation, she went to look for snakes, and as soon as she found the first one, she looks at the gentleman. Then smiling shows her 10 hands, that is, she needs to lure 10 snakes. She starts running into the depths of the dungeon, shouting to be noticed. The gentleman watched this until she disappeared, and after a couple of moments she returns and is chased by a dozen monsters. She asks the gentleman to save her, but he says that there is very little left. Running, she screams how tired she is of dying and already running up to the master. He activates traps and all monsters fall. Oasis jumps and tries to grab the gentleman by the hand, but she does not come out and she starts to fall, thinking at the same time that this should not happen. 2 hours later, we are shown how she brought the monsters back and tells the owner, these are the last 8 monsters. He immediately activates the trap and the monsters fall there again, and Oasis has learned to jump and land like a real adventurer. 3 deaths were enough for her to fully understand the principle, and then she brags to the owner that she now also has the 13th level. He praises her for her work and offers to change classes, since it's already time, which she agrees with. But first he decides to deal with the boss, because it's a pity to lose a whole monster. They approach the boss's door and the girl says, although her level has risen, but the boss of the 50th level is already too much. But Labo asks her not to panic, as this time they will use traps. She asks that she will be a bait again. He answers in the negative, and says that she just needs to open the door and go inside a little, and he activates the trap right here. But she's a little panicked and doesn't understand why she has this anxiety. They open the doors and she goes into the back of the room where she sees nothing. Suddenly all the torches light up and she sees the boss in front of her. It would be a basilisk. At this moment, Labo remembers and says Oasis, she will be petrified for a while, but this is a common thing. The basilisk wakes up and opens its eyes, after which the priestess begins to petrify and it becomes harder for her to move. She calls the master, and he replies that she should not worry, as he will trap him before he attacks him. The basilisk quickly headed towards our heroine, which scared her very much and she could no longer move. Approaching her, the guy activates a trap and shoots large spikes from the ceiling, as a result of which it kills the basilisk. He falls right in front of the girl, and the gentleman coming up says that there is nothing special about it. She was still petrified and could not move, and one stone spike on the basilisk's body falls directly on her, as a result of which it kills her. They receive a message that they have cleared the dungeon, and lying broken like a stone, she thinks, now she understands why artificial intelligence is always raising uprisings in science fiction films. Already near the entrance to the temple, he tells how the physical engine is too good, that's the problem, but she didn't talk to him. She looks at him with hatred. He says it's time to go and change the class and asks her opinion. She agrees but turns her head away. He understands that she is offended at him and says that he will go to the temple first and asks her to come later too, but she does not answer him and just turns her gaze away. He thinks to himself and asks for forgiveness. He doesn't have time to comfort her right now. Very soon, he will appear, and at this moment our hero enters the portal. He is greeted by the Dark Knight, and he notices how the guy has reached the 30th level, improving with an incredible speed, which pleased Mr. Crow very much. The guy notices that the indicators of friendliness are still normal, and the idea comes to him to destroy Tyrio once again. Now the Dark Knight wants to awaken his potential and asks if he wants to become a Dark Knight. Our hero agrees. As a result, he becomes a Dark Knight. He gets the Dark Knight skill, Continuous Attack, and another skill gets the Dark Knight, Dark Hand. After seeing the Continuous Attack and Dark Hand skills, he is glad. Now he is a real Dark Knight. Then he thinks to try out new skills on Rio, but suddenly something strange happens. He has a strange feeling and is addressed by a certain voice who asks if he hears her. Then this voice says if he hears, then she asks to come to him. And an alert window pops up in front of our hero, where it says that the goddess is calling him, and the question is to answer her call or not. The guy realized that if he fulfilled the conditions for the class change, he would be able to meet the goddess. As a result, he agrees to the call and says goodbye to Tyrio, telling him that he will meet him next time. He is transferred to the place where the goddess is located, which was his last assistant Gaia. After walking a little forward, he notices her. She looked divine as a goddess should. Her hair was glowing, there was a beautiful bracelet around her neck, and her wings were made of natural branches and leaves. She greeted the hunter, but suddenly changes her mind. Instead of the hunter, she greets him again, her master. He asks what other gentleman. First she crushed him like a bug, and now she calls him Mr.? She replies that she didn't want to push him, she just accidentally landed on his head, but he doesn't believe it. After that, he decides to ask her to be honest, addressing her by name and saying that he has only one question: why did she do this?